Admiral Voss stared at the holographic display, his weathered face betraying no emotion as the alien fleet appeared at the edge of the Sol system. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Union for just 30 years, barely a blink in cosmic terms. 30 years of being treated as curiosities, oddities from a death world that shouldn't have produced sapient life. 30 years of being underestimated. "They've breached the outer defense grid," Lieutenant Reed reported, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. All 700 ships. The Maldorian Armada had come without warning or declaration. The Union Council had been suspiciously silent. No distress calls answered, no diplomatic channels open. "Status of evacuation protocols?" Voss asked. "Nearly complete, sir. 98% of civilians are in deep shelters or off-planet. The lunar and Martian colonies are locked down." Voss nodded. At least they'd had some warning, thanks to Tom Walker's undercover work in the Council. The young diplomat had sacrificed himself sending that final transmission. The memory of those words still burned in Voss's mind. It was all a lie. They've always feared us. They're coming for Earth. Captain Mercer approached, datapad in hand. "Sir, we have confirmation. The Maldorians have used the same strategy on 3 other death worlds in the past millennium. They integrate the species, study their weaknesses, then eliminate them when they're deemed too dangerous to exist in the galactic community." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. "Humans aren't the first?" Reed asked. "No," Mercer replied. "But if our plan works, we'll be the first to survive." Voss turned to face his crew, all volunteers, all aware this might be a one-way mission. "The Maldorians and their allies believe they know everything about us. They've studied our weapons, our tactics, our biology. But there's one thing they don't understand." He called up the schematics for Operation Absolute Zero. The concept was deceptively simple. Humans evolved on a planet with seasons, with winter. They understood cold in a way most galactic species never had to. "We're not just death worlders," Voss continued. "We're survivors. And today, we become something they've never encountered before." The fleet's AI, Diana, spoke up. "The enemy will reach Earth's orbit in 17 minutes. All vessels report ready for synchronized maneuver." Voss looked out at the blue-green jewel that was Earth, possibly for the last time. Human civilization had survived ice ages, pandemics, world wars, and their own near destruction of the planet. They had clawed their way to the stars through sheer determination. "Send the final code to all ships," he ordered, "and the message to the Union worlds." As Diana complied, Voss reflected on humanity's brief time among the stars. They had been welcomed with scientific curiosity but political suspicion. Their strength, their adaptability, their ingenuity, all traits that had made them successful on Earth, had marked them as dangerous in the cosmic community. Reed looked up from her console. "Message sent, sir. All ships acknowledge receipt of Operation Absolute Zero protocols. Outside the viewports, Earth's combined defense fleet, a mere 100 ships against 700, moved into position, not to engage in a hopeless battle, but to execute the most audacious trap in human military history." "They think they know cold," Voss said quietly. "They don't know what winter really means." The Maldorian ships entered firing range, their weapons charging. They expected resistance, desperation, fear. What they couldn't know was that humans were most dangerous when backed into a corner. And as the first enemy ships opened fire, humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly why Deathworlders should never be underestimated. The first barrage from the Maldorian fleet tore through space, a dazzling display of destructive energy that illuminated Earth's night side. But the human ships didn't return fire. Instead, they executed a perfectly synchronized scatter pattern, each vessel triggering what appeared to be a malfunction. "Venting atmosphere," Reed confirmed as their ship shuddered. "All vessels reporting the same. External temperature dropping rapidly." Captain Mercer monitored the enemy's communications. "They're taking the bait. Their tactical net is lighting up. They think we've suffered catastrophic systems failures." On the main view screen, the other human ships appeared to be drifting, disabled. Emergency lighting flickered. Heat signatures diminished rapidly. To any observer, it looked like the Earth fleet had suffered some kind of mysterious, Simultaneous breakdown. Diana, Voss called. Status of the dimensional field generators? All generators charged and synchronized, Admiral. The Frost Protocol can be initiated on your mark. What the Maldorians couldn't know was that humanity had discovered something fundamental about space-time that the older galactic civilizations had missed. Perhaps because Earth's harsh conditions had forced human scientists to think differently, to pursue energy efficiency with desperate innovation. Professor Ellis, leading the team that developed the technology, had explained it simply. We can't create energy from nothing, but we can borrow it from elsewhere. The Maldorian fleet, sensing easy victory, moved closer to finish off the apparently crippled human defenders. They're deploying boarding parties, Mercer reported. Exactly as predicted. Voss allowed himself a grim smile. Begin Frost Protocol. All ships. Throughout the seemingly disabled human fleet, a new system activated. The dimensional field generators, secretly installed on every vessel, began drawing thermal energy from their immediate surroundings and shunting it elsewhere. Not destroying the energy, merely displacing it temporarily from this region of space. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Maldorians. Space itself seemed to crystallize around their ships. The sudden extreme cold, approaching absolute zero, caused exotic effects that no ship's hull was designed to withstand. Metal became brittle, energy weapons frosted over at their emitters, shields failed as their generators seized. Temperature in the target zone now minus 270 degrees Celsius and dropping, Diana reported. Enemy vessels experiencing cascading systems failures. On the view screen, the first Maldorian ship shattered like glass when it attempted to fire its main weapons. The energy backfired through systems rendered suddenly inoperable by the impossible cold. They're trying to retreat, Reed said, watching as the alien vessels struggled to maneuver away from the effect. But the cold followed them, an expanding sphere of thermal emptiness that the human ships, specifically designed for these conditions, navigated with precision. Lieutenant Kang, at the tactical station, looked up. Sir, we're detecting distress signals. The Maldorian command ship is requesting immediate cessation of hostilities. No response, Voss ordered. Not until Phase 2 is complete. The human ships, appearing to recover from their malfunctions, now moved with purpose, herding the devastated enemy fleet into a tighter formation as the cold continued to intensify. In the observation lounge adjacent to the bridge, Dr. Harrison watched the battle unfold. As Earth's foremost xenobiologist, she understood better than most what was happening to the Maldorians. Their silicon-based biology made them particularly vulnerable to extreme cold, a fact they had hidden from humanity, but that human scientists had discovered independently. They're not dying, she said quietly to Voss when he joined her. But they're suffering. Their equivalent of hypothermia is setting in. Voss nodded grimly. Good. I want the survivors to remember this feeling. I want them to associate humanity with the cold that nearly killed them today. As the disabled Maldorian fleet hung helpless in space, Voss prepared to deliver the message that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. A message not just of defiance, but of cold, calculated warning. Open a channel to the Maldorian command ship, Voss ordered, his breath visible in the frigid air of the bridge. The life support systems were operating at minimal capacity, conserving power for the dimensional field generators. The main screen flickered to life, revealing High Commander Raktos of the Maldorian fleet. His crystalline exoskeleton, normally iridescent with bioluminescent patterns, had dulled to a lifeless gray. The silicon-based being struggled to maintain composure as his body fought against the penetrating cold. This is impossible, Raktos rasped. What have you done? Voss stood before the view screen, frost forming on his uniform. We've done what Deathworlders do, Commander. We've adapted. Behind Raktos, Maldorian officers could be seen in various states of distress, their movements sluggish, their communication crystals dark. Your fleet is disabled, Voss continued. Your boarding parties are trapped in transport vessels that can no longer function. You have two options: surrender or die slowly, as the cold penetrates every system on your ships. Dr. Harrison stepped forward, addressing the alien commander. Your species can survive approximately 40 more minutes in these conditions before, Permanent crystallization of your neural pathways begins. I suggest you consider Admiral Voss's offer carefully. Raktos' compound eyes flickered with both fear and hatred. The Council will never allow this. This technology violates all Union treaties. The same Council that authorized the extermination of our species. Voss's voice was as cold as the vacuum surrounding them. We no longer recognize the authority of a council that conspires to commit genocide. On a secondary screen, Captain Mercer displayed the evidence they had gathered. Records of the previous Deathworld eliminations, the secret council votes, the careful study of human weaknesses. We know everything, Commander, Voss said. And, soon, every world in the galaxy will know too. Our message buoys are already on their way to every inhabited system. The bridge crew watched as realization dawned on the Maldorian commander. This wasn't just a defensive stand, it was a revolution. Lieutenant Reed's console chimed. Sir, we're detecting new warp signatures, 3 vessels approaching from the direction of Alpha Centauri. Reinforcements? Mercer asked, tension in his voice. Diana analyzed the signatures. Negative. The energy patterns match our colony ships. It's the Artemis, the Prometheus, and the New Horizon. Voss felt a surge of relief. The colony ships had been evacuating. Earth's children and a selection of adults. Insurance against the worst-case scenario of Earth's destruction. The largest ship, Artemis, hailed them. The screen split to show Captain Jordan, her dark skin contrasting with her white uniform. Admiral, we received your signal. The colonies are secure, and we've returned with the prototypes. Her expression was solemn. All 3,000 of them, Voss nodded. The prototypes were the next phase of Operation Absolute Zero, human-sized exosuits with integrated dimensional field generators, the ultimate infantry weapon against an enemy that had never known winter. Begin deployment, Voss ordered. Target the disabled vessels first. As he turned back to Commander Raktos, Voss saw genuine fear in the alien's eyes. What? What are you going to do? The Maldorian asked. We're going to board your ships, Voss replied matter-of-factly. We're going to secure your weapons, your data cores, and your command staff. And then we're going to have a very long conversation about the future of human-Maldorian relations. The temperature on the bridge dropped another few degrees as Voss stepped closer to the screen. You came to exterminate us because you feared what humans might become, he said quietly. Today, you learn what we already are. On the tactical display, the first wave of human troops in their cold-generating exosuits launched toward the Maldorian vessels. Where they passed, space itself seemed to shimmer with frost. The Deathworlders had turned cold, and the galaxy would never be the same. From the observation deck of the Maldorian flagship, Jack Miller watched his fellow humans advance through space. The exosuits, nicknamed Winter Nights by their designers, looked otherworldly, trailing wisps of supercooled particles that crystallized in their wake. Each suit contained a miniaturized version of the dimensional field generators, creating a personal zone of extreme cold around its wearer. As the leader of the boarding party, Jack had trained for months for this moment, though none of them had expected to be testing their equipment against the Maldorians so soon. First team in position at Airlock 7, he reported through his comlink. No resistance detected. Inside his suit, Jack was perfectly comfortable despite the near-absolute zero temperatures he was generating. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humans had spent millennia trying to stay warm, only to weaponize cold when they reached the stars. Proceed with caution, came Voss's reply. We need their command structure intact. The boarding teams breached the Maldorian vessel simultaneously at multiple points. The ship's interior was eerily still, with frost covering every surface. The few Maldorians they encountered were nearly immobilized, their silicon-based bodies partially crystallized. Dr. Patel, the team's xenophysiologist, checked readings on a fallen Maldorian officer. They're entering metabolic stasis, she explained. It's their species' survival mechanism for extreme conditions. They're alive but barely conscious. Jack nodded. Secure them with minimal force. Remember, we're not exterminators. As they advanced toward the command center, Jack reflected on the intelligence briefings that had brought them here. The Maldorians, as one of the oldest Union species, had appointed themselves guardians against evolutionary aberrations. species that evolved on planets too harsh to produce balanced civilizations. Previous death worlds had been eliminated under the pretense of containing aggression. The command center doors slid open with a brittle crack. Inside, High Commander Raktos and his senior staff were still at their posts, moving with painful slowness as the cold penetrated their bodies. "Secure the room," Jack ordered his team. As the winter nights deployed containment fields around each Maldorian officer, Jack approached Raktos. The alien's crystalline exoskeleton had developed fracture patterns, his equivalent of severe frostbite. I'm Captain Jack Miller, Earth Defense Force," he announced, his voice amplified through his suit's external speakers. "By order of Admiral Voss, this vessel is now under human control." Raktos's compound eyes flickered weakly. "You cannot win against the entire Union." Jack removed a small device from his utility belt, a quantum data extractor developed specifically to interface with Maldorian technology. "We're not trying to win against the entire Union, Commander. We're trying to save it from you." With practiced precision, he attached the device to the Maldorian command console. Immediately, it began downloading the ship's database, including every communication with the Council regarding the planned extermination of humanity. "Team 2 reporting in," came a voice over Jack's comm. "We've secured the engineering section and the weapons control. No casualties on either side." Similar reports flowed in from across the Maldorian fleet as more boarding teams completed their objectives. The operation was proceeding with surgical precision, a testament to human planning and the effectiveness of the cold-generating technology. Data. "Extraction at 70%, reported the team's tech specialist. "We're getting everything. Tactical databases, communication logs, even their biological research on Deathworld species." Jack nodded. "Copy the data and prepare it for transmission to Admiral Voss." Looking at the immobilized Maldorian commander, Jack felt a complex mix of emotions. There was satisfaction in the success of their defense, but also a deep disquiet at how close humanity had come to extinction. "You know," he said to Raktos, though he wasn't sure how much the alien could comprehend in his semi-frozen state. "On Earth, we have a saying, winter is coming. It's a warning about preparing for hard times ahead." He glanced around at the frost-covered command center. "For your people, winter has arrived." As the data download completed, Jack received new orders from the flagship. "Secure the Maldorian commander for transport to Earth for formal surrender proceedings." The first battle was over. But Jack knew that the real conflict, the struggle for humanity's place in a galaxy that feared them, was just beginning. The Great Hall of the Galactic Union fell silent as Admiral Voss entered, flanked by Jack Miller and Dr. Harrison. 3D. Weeks had passed since the failed Maldorian attack on Earth, and this emergency session of the full council marked the first time humans had set foot in the hallowed chamber since learning of the betrayal. The hall was a vast amphitheater, designed to accommodate representatives from all 217 member species. At its center stood the speaker's dais, where the 5 elder race representatives normally presided. Today, only 4 were present. The Maldorian seat was conspicuously empty. "Representatives of the Galactic Union," announced the Arxian speaker, her translucent tentacles rippling with bioluminescent patterns indicating distress. "We recognize Admiral Thomas Voss of Earth, here to address the recent incident in the Sol system." Voss stepped to the podium, his face impassive. Behind him, 2 winter knights stood at attention, their cold-generating exosuits inactive but visibly present, a silent reminder of humanity's new power. "Incident?" Voss's voice carried throughout the chamber without technological assistance. "Is that what you call an attempted genocide?" Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. Many species shifted uncomfortably. The evidence packages humanity had sent throughout the galaxy had been comprehensive. Complete recordings of the battle, the boarding actions, and most damning of all, the extracted Maldorian records proving Council complicity. "The Union Council does not condone the unilateral actions taken by the Maldorian Directorate," the Arxian speaker stated carefully. "High Commander Raktos acted without proper authorization." Dr. Harrison stepped forward, activating a holographic display. "With respect, Speaker, that is factually incorrect. These records," she said as multiple documents appeared in the air, show 7 separate council sessions where the Deathworlder problem was discussed, with specific authorization for the Maldorians to address the human question. The documents rotated for all to see. Verification codes intact. Timestamps authentic. Several council members shifted nervously. Jack Miller operated the controls, highlighting specific passages. The extinction of 3 previous Deathworld species was similarly authorized, all under the designation evolutionary correction. A representative of the tree-like arbory rose from their seat. Humans must understand our position. Species from high-gravity, high-danger worlds develop differently. Historical data showed a pattern of eventual aggression. So you decided to aggress first? Voss interrupted. To eliminate potential rivals before they could challenge your dominance? The chamber erupted in a cacophony of protests and exclamations. The Arxian speaker pulsed bright red, calling for order. Admiral Voss, she said when quiet returned. What does Earth want? Reparations? The expulsion of the Maldorians from the Council? We can accommodate reasonable demands. Voss looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from dozens of worlds. Earth wants truth. Earth wants acknowledgement. And Earth wants assurance that no Deathworld species will ever again face extinction for the crime of evolving in a challenging environment. He gestured, and Jack activated the second part of their presentation. Images of the Maldorian fleet, now under human control, positioned near strategic Union installations. We could have destroyed them, Voss continued. We had the means. Instead, we chose to disable and capture. That was a human choice, made by Deathworlders you deemed too dangerous to exist. Dr. Harrison stepped forward again. We've analyzed the biological and cultural data from the 3 exterminated Deathworld species. Each one offered scientific and cultural contributions that could have benefited the Union. Each was eliminated not because they posed an actual threat, but because they represented potential competition to the established order. A hush fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. Voss's voice softened, though it lost none of its intensity. Today, humanity offers the Union a choice. We can rebuild trust, establish new protocols that protect all member species, and move forward together. Or we can continue down this path of fear and preemptive elimination. He nodded to Jack and Dr. Harrison, who activated the final part of their presentation. Schematics for a modified dimensional field generator. As a gesture of good faith, we offer this technology, not as a weapon but as a tool. Properly calibrated, it can revolutionize energy production, terraforming, and medical applications across the galaxy. The council chamber filled with surprised murmurs. No one had expected the humans to share their new technology. But know this, Voss added, his voice carrying a chill reminiscent of the technology itself. Humanity will never again be vulnerable. The next species that attempts to harm us will not face capture, but extinction. As Voss stepped back from the podium, the message was clear. The Deathworlders had not just turned cold in battle. They had brought a cold calculation to galactic politics that would forever change the balance of power. 6 months after the confrontation at the council chambers, the first galactic summit on evolutionary diversity convened on Luna, Earth's moon. Representatives from all Union worlds attended, many setting foot on a Deathworld satellite for the first time. The summit's location was symbolic, close enough to Earth to remind visitors of humanity's resilience, yet accessible enough to accommodate species unused to high gravity. The conference center, a marvel of human engineering carved into the lunar regolith, maintained different environmental zones for various biological needs. Lisa Reeves, newly appointed as Earth's ambassador to the Union, surveyed the main hall, with quiet satisfaction. As one of the architects of the post-crisis diplomatic strategy, she had fought hard for this summit. Remarkable turnout, observed her aide Ben Hayes, consulting his datapad. 192 species represented. Even the Maldorians sent a delegation. Lisa nodded, watching as the new Maldorian representative, diplomat Sistrix, conversed with delegates from 3 other worlds. The Maldorian Directorate had undergone significant political upheaval following their failed attack, with reformists now holding power. Their presence is crucial, she said. Reconciliation requires all parties at the table. The summit's agenda was ambitious. rewriting Union protocols regarding evolutionary diversity, establishing protections for all member species regardless of their world of origin, and forming a new ethics council with balanced representation from various evolutionary backgrounds. Admiral Voss, now serving as Earth's military liaison to the Union, joined them on the observation platform. Though officially retired from active command, his influence remained substantial. "The Arxians are making noise about the technology exchange provisions," he reported. "They're concerned about sharing advanced biotech with potentially aggressive species." Lisa smiled thinly. "They still don't understand, do they? This isn't about technology. It's about changing how the galaxy thinks about diversity." The central presentation area illuminated as Dr. Harrison began her keynote address on the biological advantages of evolutionary diversity. Her team had spent months compiling evidence that mixed ecosystems showed greater resilience and innovation than homogeneous ones, a pattern they argued extended to galactic civilization. "Consider the winter-night technology," Dr. Harrison was saying, gesturing to a displayed schematic. "It emerged specifically because humans evolved on a world with seasonal temperature variations. We understood cold as both danger and tool in ways silicon-based life forms never could." In the audience, several Maldorian delegates shifted uncomfortably, their exoskeletons still bearing the faint stress patterns from their exposure to extreme cold. Jack Miller, now heading Earth's new xenocultural exchange program, approached the observation platform with a group of young aliens, students from a dozen different worlds participating in the first Union exchange program on Earth. "Ambassador, Admiral," he greeted them. "Our guests have some questions about human history they hoped you might address." A young Arxian, her tentacles displaying patterns of respectful curiosity, spoke first. "Is it true that humans fought wars against each other before achieving unity? How did a species with such internal conflict avoid self-destruction?" Lisa exchanged glances with Voss. This was exactly the kind of cultural exchange they had hoped for. Genuine curiosity replacing fear. "That's a complex question," Lisa began. "But yes, our history includes numerous conflicts. Perhaps that's part of why we survived when you expected us to fail. We had practice overcoming our worst instincts." As the conversation continued, Ben discreetly alerted Lisa to an incoming priority communication. She excused herself to review it in private. The message was from the Lunar Security Team. They had detected unusual energy signatures from the Sethian delegation's quarters. The Sethians, insectoid traders known for their extensive information networks, had brought unauthorized scanning equipment, apparently attempting to gather intelligence on human defensive capabilities. Lisa considered her options carefully. 6 months ago, such a discovery might have triggered a diplomatic incident or worse, but the philosophy of the summit demanded a different approach. She composed a brief message to the head of the Sethian delegation, inviting them to a private meeting. Rather than confrontation, she would offer a guided tour of Earth's public defense installations, transparency instead of suspicion. Returning to the group, she found Admiral Voss explaining the concept of winter holidays to the fascinated alien students. "In many Earth cultures," he was saying, "the coldest season became a time of community and light, precisely because it was difficult. We learned to find warmth in each other when nature offered none." Lisa watched as understanding dawned on alien faces. Perhaps this was the most important lesson humanity could teach the galaxy: that adversity could create strength rather than merely threatening survival. Later that evening, as Earth rose over the lunar horizon, casting its blue light across the summit venue, Lisa reflected on how quickly the galaxy's perception of humanity had changed. From feared deathworlders to respected, if still somewhat intimidating, partners. The path forward would not be simple. Centuries of prejudice against deathworld species couldn't be erased in months, but the first steps had been taken. And they were steps of measured, deliberate progress rather than the cold fury that had marked humanity's entrance onto the galactic stage. 5 years after the Maldorian incident, Admiral Voss stood on the observation deck of the Union peacekeeping vessel Harmony, watching as a fleet of ships surrounded the embattled planet below. Unlike the confrontation that had changed humanity's place in the galaxy, this fleet represented a coalition of species working together under the newly established Union Diversity Corps. "Analysis complete, Admiral," reported Diana, whose AI system had been upgraded and incorporated into the Harmony systems as part of the technology exchange program. The Zeral colony has been infiltrated by approximately 3,000 void cultists. They've taken control of the planet's defense, grid and communications array. Voss nodded grimly. The Void Cult, a cross-species extremist group that had emerged in response to the changing galactic order, represented the greatest threat to the reformed Union. Their philosophy was simple and dangerous. Only through the elimination of evolutionary aberrations could galactic purity be maintained. Fleet status? He asked. All 27 vessels in position, representing 14 member species. The Winter Night battalions are prepared for deployment. The Maldorian and Arxian medical teams report ready status for post-conflict assistance. Lisa Reeves, now serving as Union Commissioner for Evolutionary Affairs, joined him at the viewport. 5 years of intensive diplomacy had left their mark. Fine lines around her eyes, a streak of gray in her dark hair. But her expression remained determined. The cult leadership is demanding we withdraw, she said. They claim to have hostages, primarily the Zeral children and elders. Voss frowned. Tactical assessment? Jack's team has completed their infiltration, Lisa replied. The Winter Knights report that the hostages are being held in 3 separate facilities. They believe a coordinated rescue operation is feasible. What had begun as a human defensive technology had evolved into something more. The Winter Night program now included members from several Union species, each bringing unique abilities that complemented the cold-generating technology. The current operation included Maldorian Knights, whose crystalline biology, once vulnerable to cold, had been adapted to channel and focus the freezing effect with unprecedented precision. The Council has authorized full intervention, Lisa continued. This is the test case for the new protocols. Voss nodded, understanding the significance. Under the Reformed Union Charter, threats against any member species based on their evolutionary background were classified as crimes against sentient diversity, the harshest category of offense under galactic law. Begin the operation, he ordered. Throughout the fleet, Winter Knights deployed toward the planet's surface in specially designed drop pods. Simultaneously, a diversionary attack engaged the hijacked defense grid, drawing attention away from the insertion points. On the tactical display, Voss watched as Jack Miller, now Commander Miller of the Union Special Operations Division, led the primary team toward the largest hostage facility. His Winter Night unit included humans, Maldorians, and even a Sethian specialist, former rivals now working in seamless coordination. Strike teams approaching targets, Diana reported. Dimensional field generators activating in 3, 2, 1. On the planet below, targeted zones suddenly plunged into impossible cold. Unlike the broad approach used against the Maldorian fleet years ago, these were surgical strikes, freezing security systems and weapons while leaving critical life support intact. First facility secured, came Jack's report. Hostages safe, moving to Phase 2. Lisa smiled slightly. They never expected us to turn their own technology against them. It was ironic. The Void cultists had recruited heavily among former Maldorian military, those who opposed their government's reconciliation with Earth. They had expected to use their inside knowledge of Maldorian weaknesses against the coalition forces. Instead, they faced an integrated response team that had turned those very vulnerabilities into strengths. Second and third facilities reporting success, Diana announced. All hostages recovered. Cult leadership cornered in the central command. Bunker! Voss turned to Lisa. Your call, Commissioner. By Union law, this is now a diplomatic situation rather than a military one. Lisa straightened her formal uniform and nodded to her aide to prepare the communication channel. Let's offer them the same choice we were given 5 years ago, adaptation or extinction. As the operation concluded with the surrender of the cult leadership, Voss found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as a desperate defense of Earth had transformed into a fundamental restructuring of galactic society. The Deathworlders, once feared and targeted for elimination, now formed the backbone of the Union's peacekeeping forces. Later, as the Coalition fleet prepared to depart with the captured cultists, Jack Miller joined Voss and Lisa on the observation deck. His Winter Night exosuit, now bearing the insignia of the Diversity Corps, represented the new face of galactic security. You know, Jack said, looking down at the peaceful planet below. When we first deployed this technology against the Maldorians, I thought we were just teaching them to fear us. I never imagined we'd end up teaching the galaxy to respect diversity instead, Lisa nodded. Fear is a short-term solution, respect endures. Voss gazed out at the stars. Countless worlds circling countless suns, each with its own evolutionary path. The galaxy learned fear on the day Deathworlders turned cold, he said quietly. But what matters more is what they learned afterward. As the Harmony prepared to jump to its next destination, a message arrived from Earth. The Union Council had unanimously approved the establishment of a permanent Deathworld cultural center on Nox, one of the planets whose species had been exterminated. Under the old regime, the center would preserve the legacy of lost civilizations, while fostering the development of newly discovered Deathworld species under Union protection. It was a bittersweet victory. Acknowledgement of past wrongs, alongside commitment to a better future. For Voss, who had witnessed humanity's darkest hour and its finest response, it represented the fulfillment of a promise made in the cold vacuum of space 5 years earlier. That the strength forged on Deathworlds would be used not just for survival, but for justice. The Deathworlders had turned cold when necessary, but it was their warmth, their capacity for reconciliation and growth, that had ultimately changed the galaxy.